Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I'm out in a field of winter beans. So just as a bit of a recap, this is light land. We are following winter wheat. The wheat residue was baled, but we had a lot of trouble at establishment. I'll cut to some footage. We planted it with the claydon, and then we returned to try and rake it with the harrow, and then we tried the claydon stubble rake, both of which failed, but we did roll it twice. So I just thought it was a good opportunity to come back and have a look at the difference in establishment rates. Last week we visited the winter beans on heavy land, which were drilled a couple of days before this, but only a couple of days, and there is quite a significant difference in establishment rate. As I pan round, you can see the rest of this block is actually in mustard. So the rotation is winter wheat followed by an overwinter cover crop and then a spring cereals. Historically that has been spring wheat. We've also tried spring oats in the past. We are going back to spring oats next year. That's the plan anyway. The issue with spring oats is contamination. We want to have as little contamination as possible. And here, this particular field has quite a bad problem, historical problem with wild oats. And so controlling wild oats in tame oats is obviously a bit of a challenge. So I asked for this to be winter beans instead, because it enables us to better control the wild oats and difficult cereal weeds. So as you can see here, we've got some cereal plants growing in the rows of beans, and as you can see they're yellow at the base, indicating they're far from happy. And interestingly, you've got some marking on the leaves here. You get occasional ones. Was it a couple there, one there, but most of one here, but most of them are looking fine. So no matter where we stop really, if I get out of my shadow, you can see yellowing again, indicating good pre-emergent herbicide control of cereals. Another reason I wanted to come out here is twofold really. One, we were struggling with the residue at drilling, so struggling to get good coverage. This year's combining, there was a bit of some long stalks which were causing us considerable complication. And in fact, I was talking to a neighbour about it. The less cultivations you do, the more precise you have to be with the combining, both the chop and the header. As far as the header table needs to be uniform and sharp, and you need to grab as many heads as possible. Interestingly, having contractors on the farm, we really noticed the difference that we were running with lifters quite often, and the benefit of lifters is that it forces the crop to feed better, and we've really missed that this year. So we've got these long tangly stalks that have avoided the header, and that has caused some trouble. So I wanted to see how the establishment was going, and also I wanted to see what effect our fascination with raking has had on the beans. So I'll just show you a row and I'll explain a bit of the problem. You can choose any row, but let's just take this one. The claydon does tend to give you this occasional gap here. Okay, plants, bit of a gap. Plants, we're getting a good row, bit of a gap. Now, bit of a gap. Okay, now these, so here's a good example. You've got a bit of a gap, but actually there's still a bean inside. So you could say, are we missing a bean here? Doesn't seem to be. So historically we've put these gaps down to bird damage, and I have to say I'm really pleased with this much more consistent distribution of beans in the row, tending to indicate to me that we are getting more beans establishing, more plants establishing. And it's probably worth saying that when we have done plant counts in the wheat, we have found that establishment rates had dropped to about 50%, and it didn't really matter whether it was the Claydon or the Moor. In both examples we were getting establishment rates of about 50%, when if you're in a cultivated system you would expect closer to 80%. So that is why we are fascinated with harrowing and trying to get better seed coverage. Now what I'm trying do is find an example of our next problem, which is a bit difficult, but I think I've got one here. So compared to the area next door, you can see we've got a lot of residue here, and I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but there's probably quite a significant difference between the height here on the unmoved ground either side and the bit in the middle. I'd say we are probably 2-inch different, and with that big pile of residue just there, it looks as if this channel here was sort of scraped clean. But interestingly, the beans have still established. I cut to some footage of a scraped clear channel in drilling time, and you can also see it here, a bit scraped clear and then a big pile of residue where Jack was obviously struggling. So here we go. So interestingly, you can see, although all the roads are going this way, you've got some batch here which is Jack trying to drag out a load of residue, and interestingly you've got a pile of residue at the end. So we're obviously, and in fact we also got a stripe there, so we're obviously in a bad bit here. But as some people in the channel pointed out, beans will grow through the residue. So we've got another example here where, as you can see, you've got plants coming up inside the row, and I'm thinking if we pan round to this way, maybe not, but definitely big piles here as he tries to distribute the trash. Big pile of trash here. Get out of the way, doggy. Big pile of trash, lots of random beans, and in fact I can see the marks there going this way where we're drilling this way, and he's dragged out the trash. So taking this as a bad area because it is quite high, lots of trash. Look at the length of that bean trying to grow through. He's probably 6-8 inches a stalk. Really reassured by this. Obviously it makes a great scratching place as well. So overall, the takeaway lesson is that, as far as I'm concerned, double rolling and that effort to cover the seed and mitigate these piles of trash. We've got a couple here, this one here, another one there, and another one there. We did really struggle in this particular area. The reassuring point is that actually we've got a good seed population. Despite it taking a little bit longer, we have managed to establish well through the piles of residue, and more importantly, the residue doesn't seem seems to have rotted down to the point at which it won't affect combining next year, because that's what I was really worried about, that if you've got a big lump of soil, the header hits the soil, then you stop the header, got a nasty lump that you've got to again deal with again the next year. This would be a classic. See, this I would say is probably a foot tall, and the header comes this way, hits the pile, bulldozes, blocks the header, creates a mount of straw behind. My father has a catchphrase, every seed to get the same chance, and in those situations you've just created a big pile of straw and you're on for a real challenge about getting consistency. And I hate to say it, but direct drilling, conservation agriculture is all about these what appear to be quite minute changes and attention to detail. It's quite easy for me on my relatively small farm. We are 1,200 acres. It's relatively easy for me to concentrate on individual fields, but farming at scale is a real challenge because you want to treat a whole block the same, but we're increasingly having to look at soil types. In this particular farm, we changed the block cropping in order that the blocks are all of the same soil type, because that affects cultivations. And similarly, even then, like this field, having to take an individual field out for special measures because it's got a grassweed problem or something similar. We've got a field elsewhere on this farm that's in special measures. We haven't been able to grow a consistent crop there. We're looking at compaction, drainage, lots of different things to try and figure out what's wrong. So let's just pop across the road. As you can see, pop across the road, have a look at the mustard, see how that's getting on. The 1st of November, and the mustard is just coming out. Here we go, we'll use a lab test. So the mustard is just coming out in flower. It's over the dogs. They're in a tram line at the moment, but as you can see, great demonstration. Right, so as you can see, it's just about coming out in flower. It's probably sort of realistically sort of mid-thigh sort of height. Where it's been double applied on the headlands is always the first bit to flower, where there's a bit more competition. So a quick update on this, or a quick history recap. So it was winter wheat, it was baled, and then the mustard was blown on with our Technique applicator, boom applicator, Terracast applicator. So it was blown on at 6 kilos a hectare. We applied it pretty soon after combining. The issue was that we were in the middle of the drought, and so absolutely nothing grew, and that's quite unusual for the mustard. It really needs very little moisture to establish. For those of you who aren't aware of mustard or haven't grown it before, it's pretty resilient when it comes to flea beetle damage. That's quite nicely. Because this is an SFI plot, it has got other things. It's multi-species, and as you can see inside the canopy, we've got some vetch growing. So it's a mustard vetch combo with some cereal volunteers to make up the third species. That's just a nice low bit, just so that I can find the vetch. We go here, Got some more vetch poking through there. The issue I have with vetch is it's pretty slow to establish. So let's take a relatively strong bit here. Let's have a look inside the canopy, see if we can find any vetch in a competitive area. It's not looking good. Yeah. Is that a vetch? Yeah, there we go. There's a vetch leaf even below the canopy. It's grown for an SFI environmental scheme, so we'll get a payment for that. It is going to be sheep grazed. I've noticed the contract grazier has put his electric fencing posts out, so he's obviously keen to get out here. I often say once it gets to shin, it goes, or once it reaches your shin, it bolts to knee pretty quickly, and we really want to get in as soon as flowering starts. So really now's the time where we want to be in here. There are 4 fields in the sequence, and this is growing along nicely. Unfortunately, we've got quite good evidence to suggest that there is a yield penalty for grazing, which really hurts me to admit to that. Regenerative practices would tend to indicate that by introducing livestock, you're doing manure, organic manure, they're spreading it themselves. It really should be the best case scenario, but I don't, whether it's the point load pressure of a sheep's feet, you know, those compaction rollers are called sheep feet rollers for a reason. It's a lot of pressure, and we do get a lot of surface compaction. What we have found is that if we leave it a couple of months, a couple of weeks from the sheep leaving to us coming back to establish the crop, that is enough time for the soil to recover from the compaction. I'm making my way across the field because actually I've seen something that I think is worthy of comment. So we've got an old video, I'll put the link in the description, where we review different grazing times and the effect on yield. There definitely is a yield penalty from trying to follow the sheep too soon. So we will graze this, and then depending on the weather, I'm probably quite keen to see if we can come back through. We would use the Claydon probably in this scenario to establish the spring oats, but again we're now pretty wedded to the concept of harrowing, and the problem of going in the winter is not the harrowing, but it's getting on to do the rolling. That's a bit of a challenge. So we shall follow this and see what happens. Dogs are just looking at chasing a deer, so I might just stop for a quick second. I was the operator in this field, so as you can see, a blank section here. I can actually remember this. I thought I'd come back, but it looks as if I came back on the wrong side. I should have done that one. So this is all my error, but some of our best learning experiences come from mistakes. In fact, I think it's Michael Jordan who said, I learn from my mistakes, not from my successes. But this is a classic whereby we have mustard on the edge here, and we have an empty miss in the middle, and I'm here because of the black grass. So as you can see, clear edge where the applicator switches off, and we can just have a look at this black in here. Pretty close to being a mat of black grass. We came back with a second application of vetch, and some of the vetch is growing, but the allelopathy or the allelopathy effect of the black grass is quite clear. It really does suppress other plants. Now, I think the interesting point will be to have a look at, there's no change in population, there's no difference in seed bank between this bit of land and this. The only difference is that that has mustard on it and that doesn't. So let's go, you can see the sort of population of blackgrass here. Let's have a dig around in here and see what the population is. So here I would say it's a bit lighter, but we are in a gap. Now if you pick a nice thick sort of bit of blackgrass, mustard, actually it's quite interesting because the plants change. These are all wheats. There is blackgrass here, but there's a lot more wheat population than blackgrass. And there's our friend the vetch, he's still growing. I would say it's about half of the population that we have in there. That generates two questions for me really. Did those seeds grow and die, outcompeted by the mustard? Have the existing plants just not flourished, as in the existing blackgrass not flourished? Lots of questions, but certainly the blackgrass numbers are not as significant underneath the canopy as they are in the unplanted area. Not quite sure what this means for what this means for the agronomy, but what it does do, I can tell you one thing it does do, is that this area here, if left till the spring, would create a real issue with establishment. The hormones secreted from that level of blackgrass would seriously impair the establishment of the next cereal. So that is an advantage the mustard gives us, and we get the sheep to walk all over it, and it becomes frost sensitive, that's for sure, more frost sensitive. We have historically had quite a bit of success with rolling blackgrass in a big frost, like a -6 frost. We can kill it in that without using chemical. We have a lot of quite strong blackgrass like this, which I think is going to make its way through the rolling, survive it, but as I say, I think the leaf top is going to be damaged, whereas something like a wheat plant like this has suffered significant damage, and I don't think it's going to make its way through. It's not going to survive. There you go, there's a clear break. Thank you very much for watching this week. Lots of new subscribers by virtue of our accident, so welcome to the channel. About 70% of people who watch the channel don't subscribe, so please let's have some more subscriptions. It would be great to see that grow. Just helps keep me motivated to supplying regenerative farming content and lessons learned. So thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.